My parents threw me out so my golden sister could take over the home, even though paid for it. But karma arrived much sooner than they thought. Buying a beautiful house for your parents, a real gift of love, only to find out they secretly planned to kick you out so your golden sister could live there instead? Yeah, that actually happened to me. And the way karma hit them back? Well, it was faster and far more satisfying than anyone expected. I'm Madison, 37. For the past 15 years, I've poured my life into building a career as a senior manager at one of Wall Street's leading investment banks. This story, though, isn't really about Wall Street. It's about my complex, messed-up family, especially my sister Emily, who's 47, my parents, now in their late 70s, and a house that became the focal point of the biggest family betrayal you can imagine. To truly understand it, we have to go right back to the beginning. My parents were in their late 40s when I was born. I was an unplanned child. My mother used to tell me quite frequently that they already had Emily, who was 10 years older, and she was more than enough. It wasn't said with malice, you know. It was this casual, almost indifferent tone that somehow made it even worse. "We didn't plan for you," she'd say, while arranging Emily's extracurriculars or putting together her college application paperwork. These seemingly innocuous comments, constant reminders of my position as an afterthought, shaped every single one of my early years. Honestly, I might not even be here if it weren't for my maternal grandparents. My parents saw me as a burden they hadn't asked for, but my grandparents? They were absolutely thrilled at the prospect of a second grandchild. It was clear right away that I was an afterthought in my parents' lives. Every morning, they had the same ritual when they dropped me off at my grandparents' place. My father, jingling his keys, getting ready for work, would say to my grandfather, "You wanted her. She's all yours." My grandparents' house became my true home, a haven where I felt genuinely loved, truly wanted. They made sure I was fed, cared for, picked me up from school, helped with my homework, took me to the park. My grandfather, a retired math professor, would spend hours teaching me about numbers and problem solving. "Numbers never lie, Madison," he'd say. "They tell stories more honest than people do." These lessons, shared at their kitchen table, would later influence my professional choices in ways I couldn't have predicted. My grandma, a retired high school teacher, would help me with my schoolwork every afternoon, making sure I fully grasped each idea. Her patience was boundless. "Knowledge," she'd add in her firm yet kind voice, "is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you." She also taught me to cook, not as a chore, but as a way to express creativity and love. Those hours in their kitchen, reviewing my school day, learning to measure ingredients precisely, became some of my most cherished memories. My parents, usually exhausted and a little irritated from having to make the trip, would only arrive late at night to pick me up. "Madison," my grandmother would whisper as she hugged me goodbye every night, "you're the best thing that ever happened to us." In her loving embrace, I could almost forget that I wasn't wanted anywhere else. They were my emotional rock, giving me the stability and affection so conspicuously absent at home. My grandfather would often add, "Remember, Madison, sometimes the best things in life aren't planned." As Emily got ready for her seemingly perfect future, I learned to live as an afterthought in my own home. My sister just pretended I didn't exist. She wasn't overtly nasty. She'd be sprawled on the couch, glued to the phone, gossiping about boys and college applications, completely oblivious to me playing with my dolls in the corner of our shared living room. The difference in how my parents treated us was stark and unwavering. I'd hear my mother's voice, brimming with pride, as she talked about Emily's achievements to family or friends. "Emily got straight A's again. Emily made the debate team. Emily got accepted to her dream college." They went to all her school functions, her science fairs, her debating contests. For mine, they consistently cited, "We're too tired," "We have to work," or "You understand, don't you?" as excuses for their glaring absence. My grandparents, though, they were my cheerleaders, attending every single one of my school functions with true joy and pride. I hoped that things at home would change when Emily finally went off to college. I was the daughter who stayed. Maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally see me. I was completely, utterly mistaken. At 14, I went from being invisible to being the family housekeeper. "Madison," my mother would call out, before I could even put my backpack down after school. "The house needs cleaning. Start with the bathrooms." All of Emily's chores, plus a host of new duties, fell to me. I got to know the washing machine settings and peculiarities by heart. It became my daily companion. Cleaning, cooking, keeping a home for parents who barely acknowledged my existence, felt like a continuous loop of endless housework. "You live here, you need to contribute," my father would remark if I hesitated. "Your sister always did her part." By 14, my career progressed from cleaning to cooking. It wasn't a gradual shift. One day, my mother simply stopped preparing dinner. "You're old enough now," she declared one morning. "We expect dinner ready when we get home from work." Despite the taxing domestic responsibilities, I maintained a stellar academic standing. My teachers noticed my aptitude for economics and mathematics and encouraged me to compete in academic events. To help me prepare, my grandfather would dedicate extra time, teaching me complex ideas way above my grade level. "You have a gift with numbers, Madison," he would exclaim, pride shining in his eyes. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Dreaming about college was my only escape. Every night, after doing the dishes, I'd retreat to my room and pore over university websites. I envisioned myself on sprawling campuses, far from the never-ending tasks and the chilly quiet of my own home. My diligence in school paid off. Despite my household responsibilities, I maintained straight A's, and at 16, I received acceptance letters from several prestigious colleges, including some renowned for their top-notch finance programs. Then came Emily's engagement. One Sunday afternoon, she bounded through the front door, pulling a tall, smartly dressed man along with her. "Mom, Dad, this is James. We're getting married." You would have thought someone had just won the lottery. My mother was sobbing with happiness. My father was already on the phone, calling family. They literally sprung from their seats. "We'll cover everything," my mother exclaimed, hugging Emily. "Our first daughter's wedding has to be perfect." For months, our home was consumed by wedding preparations. Every discussion centered on guest lists, venues, flowers. Expensive outfits, high-end vendors, everything top tier. Money appeared to flow like water. My grandparents attended the wedding, but they didn't seem to enjoy the extravagant decor. My grandfather just shook his head at the champagne fountain, and I saw my grandma scowl at a sculpture that probably cost more than a semester's tuition. But they likely already knew what was coming, so they kept their opinions to themselves. On the day I received my acceptance letters, my heart pounding, I gave my parents the wonderful news, laying 3 envelopes out on the dinner table. "That's nice," my mother murmured, barely glancing up from her meal. "But we can't pay for it. We spent all our savings on your sister's wedding, even took out a loan for it. There's nothing left for college." "But you paid for Emily's college," I stumbled out, my voice barely a whisper. "That was different," my mother said, a condescending tone in her voice. "We saw potential in her." The ensuing hush was deafening. "You should get a job, save up some money, and take out student loans," my father chimed in. "That's what responsible adults do." I had never dared to leave the table without being excused before. But that night, I just stood up. Grabbing my phone with trembling hands, I dialed my grandmother. Minutes later, I was crying on their familiar porch. As he listened to my narrative, my grandfather's expression hardened, but I couldn't quite read the sparkle in his eyes. They exchanged a knowing glance. After I had told them everything, my grandfather took my hand. "Madison," he said, "we've been saving for your education since the day you were born. We've been expecting something like this." He returned from his study with a folder. Inside were bank statements, demonstrating years of meticulous saving. "You can choose any of those universities. We've got you covered." I moved in with my grandparents that evening, packing only my necessities. When I told my folks I was leaving, they were downstairs watching TV and hardly looked up. "Whatever you think is best," my mother said, her gaze fixed on the screen. Did I hear the relief in her voice? The years that followed were revolutionary. I enrolled in one of the best business schools to study financial analysis. My passion for doing things correctly was perhaps prompted by witnessing my parents' poor financial management. My zeal and innate financial skills were quickly noted by my lecturers. Before long, I was staying after class to talk about difficult financial ideas. For the first time in my life, someone other than my grandparents saw real potential in me. During college, I obtained esteemed internships at significant financial institutions. Every summer presented fresh possibilities and challenges. Senior managers were impressed by my analytical abilities and meticulousness. During my performance review at Morgan Stanley, my supervisor said, "You've got a natural instinct for this, Madison. We'd love to have you back next summer." With the exception of calls with my grandparents, I kept my head down, focused on my schoolwork, hardly thinking about my family. After I graduated, I was hired by one of the city's leading financial firms. I never would have imagined earning the starter pay they offered. I found a small, clean, and secure one-bedroom apartment. Every morning, I was thankful I didn't have to make breakfast for anyone but myself. As I poured myself into every new challenge, my career took off. I received bonuses and promotions I could never have dreamed of when I was younger. Within 5 years, I advanced to a senior role, overseeing intricate portfolios and fostering significant client connections within the industry. I became known for my strategic thinking and analytical accuracy. Every accomplishment felt like a subliminal affirmation that my parents had completely misjudged my abilities. In the meantime, I discovered from my occasional chats with my grandparents that Emily's marketing profession wasn't exactly succeeding as she had intended. James, my grandma, told me in one of our weekly conversations, Emily's husband, he struggles to maintain a career. They're begging for money from your parents all the time. Your mother even emptied her retirement account last month to help them with rent. They just can't say no to her. After a year, things deteriorated further. Even with my parents' assistance, Emily and James were no longer able to pay their rent. They and their twins, who were 7 years old, returned to my former bedroom. My parents, who had been so proud of Emily's abilities, suddenly had to provide for her entire family, in addition to their golden child. I maintained my distance, concentrating on developing my own life and profession. Every bonus, promotion, and successful transaction served as a quiet affirmation that I wasn't the failure my parents had predicted. By my mid-30s, I had substantial investments and money, enough for a down payment on a home of my own. Then, everything changed. My grandfather died unexpectedly after suffering a severe heart attack. It was a tragic loss. He was the father figure who had supported me when no one else did, more than just a grandfather. After that, my grandma, who had spent more than 50 years with him, seemed to lose her spark. She followed him less than 2 months later. In every significant sense, they had been my biological parents, and suddenly they were no longer with me. Behind me, at the funeral home, I heard my mother's voice while I was setting up my grandmother's service. "Madison, do you want some help with the arrangements?" I turned around. She was standing there, looking older, more worn out than I'd remembered. A part of me wanted to tell her to go, but I refrained because of her face. "Sure," I said to myself. "That would be nice." My parents started to open up over the course of the following few days as we prepared the service. They acknowledged that they were having difficulties. One afternoon, when we were choosing flowers, my father admitted, "We haven't been financially well off since retirement." He went on to say, "We barely make ends meet," before mentioning Emily's twins. I recognized that my sister and her family continued to live with them and rely on their diminishing income. We convened in a wood-paneled office for the reading of the will, 1 week after we buried my grandma. Emily and James were slumped on recliners next to my parents, while I sat opposite from them. The tension was thick enough to sever with a knife, and the room smelled of furniture polish and old papers. Though none of us realized it at the time, what followed would start a series of events that would permanently alter the relationship of our family. After adjusting his glasses, Mr. Patterson, the notary, started reading in a monotone. I anticipated the standard legal jargon, but what followed made everyone sit up. "To our beloved granddaughter Madison, we leave our house at 1542 Maple Street and the sum of $150,000. The ensuing hush was deafening. My mother tightened her hold on my father's arm until her knuckles turned white, and Emily's mouth dropped wide open. After clearing his throat, Mr. Patterson went on. He glanced at my mother and said, "And a personal note from Mr. Henderson to his daughter, Margaret." The message read, "Remember, Margaret, that we provided you with $200,000 just when you needed it most. As we respected your needs back then, we expect you will respect our final decision." My mother's cheeks, which had flushed red, now turned pale. Emily and James looked at each other anxiously, while my father gazed at the floor. In the parking lot, my parents approached me. The notary had finished and collected his paperwork. Something desperate had taken the place of the calm manner they had displayed during the funeral preparations. With a shaky voice, my mother said, "Madison, honey, you must realize that we always assumed we would inherit the house. We're having trouble, but we were depending on it. The mortgage, Emily's family's expenses. We could really use the house," my father continued, stroking his gray hair, speaking about how her youngsters wanted a yard to play in. Emily also joined in, pleading. However, I just got into my car and left. Over the course of the following few weeks, I kept thinking about my grandparents' parting gift. My life was well established near the city, and although the house I had inherited held many priceless memories, it was too large for me alone. In the meantime, I learned about my parents' growing financial difficulties from our weekly chats. Helping Emily and her family had drained their retirement funds, and they were finding it more and more difficult to pay their own mortgage. I gave it a lot of thought before deciding I would purchase my parents a better house. One that was single-story, had a lovely garden, but was easier to maintain. With the money I made from the sale of my grandparents' house and my own savings, it would be perfect for their retirement years. Something cozy. I was shocked by their response when I shared my concept with them. They actually started crying with happiness. After several weeks of house hunting, we eventually discovered the ideal location. A stunning ranch-style house with large doorways and no stairs in a peaceful neighborhood. My folks couldn't stop gushing about how thrilled they were. After the purchase was finalized, my dad said, "A proper housewarming party is what we need." "It is the least we can do to make all the arrangements," my mother added. "That would be beautiful," I said, intending to surprise them with the deed at the festivities. "Tell me when, please." Weeks went by. Even though I had a lot of work to do, I kept expecting an invitation. "Oh my mom would say, 'We're still planning, honey. You are aware that these tasks require time.' My father would also say, 'We want it to be perfect. We'll notify you shortly.' I was annoyed by their evasive answers for some reason. One evening, after another evasive phone call from my mother, I typed Emily's name into Facebook. We weren't connected on any social media, and I hadn't seen her page in years. Just hours ago it was posted. "I can't wait for this Saturday's housewarming party for Mom and Dad. So excited to celebrate with everyone in this beautiful residence." Numerous friends and family members had confirmed their attendance in scores of comments. Pictures showed caterers being hired and decorations being set up. This was hardly an impromptu get-together. Weeks had been spent organizing it. I called my mother, my fingers trembling slightly. "Hello, Mom. I wanted to inquire further about the housewarming party. Do you have a date in mind yet?" "Oh, honey, not just yet," she said with practiced ease. "Most likely in a few weeks. The specifics are still being worked out. Everyone except me, apparently." As that Saturday drew near, I had to make a choice. Should I confront them? Should I just let it go? How could they keep me out of the festivities after everything that had transpired, after I had purchased this house for them? I would eventually find out, but not in the manner I had anticipated. On Saturday, I parked a block from the house I had purchased for my parents. Through the windows, I could see dozens of people mingling, Emily's social circle, friends, and relatives. My father offered tours of the house I bought, while my mother, dressed in her special occasion pearls, welcomed guests at the entrance. Twinkling lights and welcome banners adorned the mansion. Laughter and music poured out onto the street. It was obvious that they had spent weeks organizing this housewarming celebration, to which I was not invited. For a while, I sat in my car and watched Emily's twins chase each other past crowds of grown-ups. Through the wide bay window, I could see moving boxes with Emily's handwriting on them, stacked in the corner. The process of relocating her family's possessions had already begun. I inhaled deeply before sneaking in through the side door. The aroma of flowers and catered cuisine filled the house. I heard my father speaking to a gathering of people in the living room when I followed his voice. "After all these years of hard work," he boasted, "we finally did it. We bought our dream home." My mother excitedly added, "And don't forget about Emily. She helped so much with the down payment. Such a wonderful daughter, always thinking about family first." Then, responding to a question about me, she went on, "Unlike some people, our younger daughter hasn't helped us at all. Too busy with her career to care about family." Heat sprang to my face. I stood in the doorway, and then I spoke. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter, "I think you've got that backwards." Everyone jumped. A dead silence fell over the room. My dad was the first to recover, grinning tightly. "Madison, what a surprise. Especially," I continued, stepping fully into the room, "since you forgot to invite me to the housewarming party for the house I bought." The quiet grew longer, thicker. His shoes squeaked as Emily's husband, James, peeked in, inquiring as to why everyone appeared so distressed. One of the twins pulled at Emily's sleeve. "You bought it?" "Yes, but it's ours now." "You can't expect eternal gratitude," my mother said, a hint of abrasiveness in her voice. With the heads nodding around him, my father added, "That's right," gaining confidence. "And frankly, you're not welcome here. This is a family gathering, and Emily and her family will be living here too. They've already sold their house, my mom said. It's all arranged. The twins need a stable home. I extracted a folder from my bag. You seem to be confused about something, I remarked, holding out the ownership and deed documents. This house belongs to me. I never signed it over to you. My mother's face changed from pale to ashen. My father began to ramble on about his responsibilities to his family. Emily's self-assured grin broke when she realized her preparations were completely failing. Despite my shaking palms, I continued, my voice firm. I was planning to give it to you tonight. I thought this could be a fresh start for all of us. Instead, you've shown me nothing has changed. You can't do this. My mother's voice became a screech. We're your parents. No, I said softly. You're just the people who gave birth to me. My real parents, my grandparents, taught me that family means more than blood. They also taught me about finances, which is why I own this house, and you don't. I turned to speak to the astonished visitors. I'm sorry, but this party is over. This is my house, and I'm asking everyone to leave. My parents, Emily, James, the twins, and all of their guests departed in stunned silence. From the porch, I observed them driving off one by one, until the street was deserted. In the yard, the ornamental lights continued to sparkle mockingly. Inside, half-empty drinks and discarded food plates covered every surface. The house, which was supposed to be my gift of reconciliation, ended up being the last straw in our relationship. A few weeks later, I found out that they had purchased an apartment using the proceeds from the sale of their previous home. 3 generations crowded into a 2-person apartment. They tried calling me all the time at first. Their voicemails varied between angry accusations. You've become so heartless. Just like your grandparents warned us you would. And guilt-tripping. How could you do this to your own family? I disabled their social media accounts, emails, and phone numbers. They were a reminder of everything that went wrong in our family. The house is now empty. I have an appointment with a real estate agent tomorrow. It's not worth attempting to cure everything. Like old photos in a dusty album, some relationships are better left in the past. When I eventually have kids of my own, I've made a promise to myself that they won't ever need to win my affection or vie for my attention. In contrast to my parents, I will love my kids just as much, and without conditions, just as my grandparents loved me. Every heartbreaking reality about my family was exposed that Saturday night. The incident encapsulated every insult I had experienced as a youngster, every instance of favoritism toward Emily, and every instance in which I had been regarded as an afterthought. I had never before experienced such clarity as I stood in the doorway, witnessing my parents rewrite history by preparing to relocate my sister's family onto my land without even asking me. How could you do this to your own family? Was my mother's final attempt at manipulation, but it failed against my newfound determination. I came to understand that forgiving does not always entail letting harmful people return to your life. Forgiving oneself for leaving can be necessary at times. Before putting away the old wedding picture of my parents, I promised my future children that they would never experience the anguish of conditional love, the hurt of being compared to a sibling, or doubt their position in the family. With me, the cycle of partiality and emotional blackmail would come to a stop. Emily's twins were playing in the tiny courtyard when I last drove by my parents' apartment complex. I briefly experienced sadness, but it was for the relationships that never truly existed in the first place, not for the ones I had lost. My grandparents taught me that a true family is based on love, respect, and support for one another, despite the belief that blood is thicker than water. I take their lessons with me as I start this new phase of my life. Love ought to be freely given rather than demanded. Family is more than just genetics. Walking away is sometimes the healthiest course of action. I didn't open my mother's last unread email. I just erased it. Any defenses or charges it included were no longer relevant. At last, I had discovered how to put my own value ahead of their conditional approval. Their kind of familial devotion has no place in the life I'm creating now. New opportunities await us in the future, free from the burden of attempting to win affection from those who are unable to freely give it. I learned what true family looks like from my grandparents. I'll build that kind of family for myself someday, one based on respect for one another, unconditional love, and the knowledge that each individual is equally important. At long last, the chapter of being the family afterthought is over. Being the author of my own life is only the beginning of my journey. Tell me, have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you were born into? What does family truly mean to you? I'm genuinely curious to hear your stories in the comments below.